ManagerLLCITY. That's how we need.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host Alex, and with me I have Mike. How are you, Mike?
I'm good. Good to be here after a surprise result. I would call it.
Surprise? Yeah. Look, I mean, at halftime, I think a lot of people would have been saying it was a fully expected game, the way things were tracking. But we did manage to turn things around in the second half to emerge 3-1 winners over Stoke last weekend. Look, it really is a game of two halves. So maybe we try and talk through that first half first, and then we can talk about the changes that were made and the results we were able to manage in that second half. But it did feel like a lot of the same in that first half, with chances, not much end product, maybe questionable lineup as well. I mean, having Irma out on the left-hand side didn't really seem to offer too much. Melham through the middle didn't offer too much either. And their goal just, created basically from a corner where they were able to just walk down the center of the field, almost unopposed, and then a corner where zonal marking really didn't come to the fore to allow them to get in front.
Yeah. I think you're right in terms of the whole two half game. It's your typical. If everything had gone the way of the first half, it would have been sitting here saying, I think it's time for Walter to leave. I'm still of that belief in a sense, but I think what slightly concerns me is that the change to bring Miller on wasn't a choice.
Yeah.
Right. Abdush has come off injured, and Walter said it at the end of the game. He said, I had to take Abdush off, brought Miller on, and I think Miller's had a pretty all right start to the season. I don't think I'd say that it's necessarily been incredible. I think he's definitely tried, but it just seems like it hasn't come off for him in the first couple of games. Whereas I don't know what it was with him in that game against Stoke, but it just seemed like he wanted it more, or he felt like he had something to prove, and maybe his time with Canada in international duty may have helped. But he just came. I think he came on a completely changed player. It almost felt like every time he got the ball, something was going to happen. And I think, like you said at the beginning, I'm not sure how much I'm liking Abdush on the wing.
Yeah. I think I saw Miller described as the sort of player who, say he plays 45 games for the season, he's sort of man of the match in 10 of them, outstanding. And then for 35, you probably don't notice him too much, because I feel like that's sort of been the way the first few games of the season. I mean, he had that assist against Plymouth, which was really just sort of a 1-2 with Coyle. It wasn't really anything too spectacular. But then in this game, he's burst to life off the bench, direct, exactly what you'd want from a winger. But yeah, Irma, coming off as with a knock, so not really a decision from Volta to make that change. It's one of those ones, like you said. I mean, if the result had panned out as it was in that first half, we're sitting here almost saying, yeah, it's got to be time to go, because we're seeing the same thing game after game. Tactics kind of questionable, not leading to a whole lot. Structure, formation, not really, setting us up to win the match. But then Slater comes off the bench, fired up, and manages to put us in front after, it was an interesting penalty decision to give us the pen, because, you argue, I think there's the debate whether Bedier's offside, first of all, and then there's Balumi offside before he comes back in, onside to win the foul. But you sort of take your chances, and we suddenly find ourselves 2-1 up.
Yeah, for sure. I think we do get a little bit lucky with the pen, and I think we get lucky with Palmer having it, I guess, palmed straight back to him. But I think Slater, and I think there were some videos coming out after that I think we shared in the group with the man of the match, and how Walter is having a bit of a laugh with Palmer and Slater, and I think you almost see at the end Slater's expression. I think he's got a fire, and whether that's a fire out of annoyance or hatred, whatever it may be, he came on and was very much I deserve to be starting mood. And you can tell, I think, by the celebration and putting his arms out saying, like, I'll do this week in, week out. So why was he dropped? And it's really hard to say anything to almost justify why he was dropped after a performance like that.
Yeah, I think I saw the tweet. I want to say it was the Hull City Southern supporters saying Slater is the sort of player that managers come in and say, okay, well, I've got to improve the midfield. I've got to change things around. I've got to, improve on the weak spots in the midfield. And then after 5 weeks go, yeah, Slater's one of the first names on the team sheet, which I think in previous years we saw happen with Coyle as well. Coyle's another one who's really sort of shown that his work rate can really is a good substitute for quality. And I don't mean that it sounds a bit backhanded, but I guess I mean, you can go and sign these perceived higher quality players, like Marvin Mellum coming in from Germany, came in with arguably a better reputation than someone like Slater would have. But if you don't have that desire and work rate, you can find yourself out of the side pretty quickly in place of Slater.
100%. And I think, we'll get to what we think our lineup's going to be for the next couple of games, but I think Slater's definitely a name that has a bit more weight behind it now.
Yeah, for sure. Last player to touch on as well would be Casey Palmer, who I think a few of us were sort of questioning, was he a signing we needed to make? We seem to have a lot of midfielders all of a sudden, but I think his championship experience really underlined in this game with that, what you sort of said, like he got a bit fortunate with the rebound from the penalty, and then also his part in that own goal to really seal the game. Probably played the least minutes just about of any of these new signings, but he's, knows the league very well, which is a bit of a cliche, but he's been able to hit the ground running.
Yeah, I think he had a great game, and let's not forget that he had scored for Coventry before making the move over as well. So it wasn't like he was trying to fit into the championship. Like a player with championship experience already off the mark for a club this season, and now off the mark for us as well. I think he's going to prove to be a pretty good signing, at least hopefully a pretty reliable signing. I think someone that we hadn't touched on yet was Bedia. I know we were having a conversation about it in the chat where he's the kind of player that's going to annoy defense, and he's waiting for the right ball to come in. But in situations like our first half, where, what was the stat? He touched the ball 8 times in the game, so how do we expect him to score? I think as a striker, you just can't keep doing the same thing over and over again and just waiting. I feel like at some point it would have made sense for him to just drop in a little and get involved and almost be an extra man in I guess the forward part of midfield, just so that he can at least get some time on the ball and get comfortable with it. Because if he's just going to be waiting for the ball to come in and we're not getting the right deliveries in, then it's going to look like he had done nothing.
And that again comes back to the lineup and me questioning why we're playing someone like Omer on the wing when we've got these natural wingers in Miller, we've got Kamara as well as Balumi. If you get those wingers up in high positions where they can then get those crosses into someone like Beja, I mean, he's got the height and the strength that we should be taking more advantage of. It almost just feels like we're still trying to figure out how we want to play with the players that we have, which is kind of funny because in preseason it felt a lot like we were making signings, like Volta was basically vetoing signings he didn't think would fit his style. But now it still feels like we've signed all these players and he still has to figure out how they're all going to fit in. So, Cardiff coming up is a really good opportunity to really sort of say what is our best 11 against a team that is playing pretty poorly, and hopefully we can get a bit of confidence in the players. But yeah, Betty is an interesting one at this stage. He's sort of that classic striker, which we've had our fair share of them, where everyone kind of says, he throws himself around, he looks good, he's a handful for defenders, and then come the end of the season, he's got like 2 goals to his name, and you go, you kind of hope for a little bit more than that from a striker.
Nick Proschwitz.
Yeah, or Mbakani, or Danny Graham. Like, there's so many of them, right? Like, Deli Adebola, all those guys. We'll probably throw our hat over the top 3 from this one. It's the players that we've mentioned, but what was your top 3 for this match?
Slater, Palmer, and Miller.
Yeah, nice one. I've basically just got I've still gone Slater for the 3. I've then gone Miller for the 2 and Palmer for the 1. I probably being harsh on Palmer, just saying, well, because the second goal was technically an own goal and he missed the penalty. So I've down to the 1 vote.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Quality finish from Slater, though, I've got to say, like, I've watched it a few times now, and just like he sort of shifts just a yard in. But then still takes it on that right. Like you'd think there's temptations to go on your left from that angle, but he just side foots it in with the right. It's sort of deceived the keeper in that sense, and it's a quality finish.
Yeah, he didn't have that much space either, so it was wasn't much of a take back from the foot.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, yeah, it's a short episode in that sense. I mean, we'll talk Cardiff and QPR probably as a collective. QPR being the midweek game. We can talk changes, I suppose, for the Cardiff game. Harder to predict, I suppose, what we do for the QPR game. Only piece of news that I'll touch on, sort of in conjunction with these games, I suppose, is the impending signing of João Pedro. No, not that one. For a free agent. I think he's got one Italian cap to his name, most recently playing in Brazil, and was a Fenerbahce player. So we've got those links there with Ajun. Good to have a third striker in the building, I suppose. But I look at it, I'm like, look, he was playing in Brazil. So was Oscar. Oscar came back and didn't do too much. I'm like, I feel like we've just got an older version of Oscar who'll just be a third, an option off the bench if we're chasing a game.
If I close my eyes and think it is the good one, then I think I'll be okay.
Yeah, I think that's going to be it. Though it is very depressing that I've kind of realized I'm now because I'm 32, that when I see a player signing for us who's 32 and I think, oh, he's a bit old, and I go, far out. It's a bit of a reality check.
Yeah.
But we'll talk Cardiff now. It's 2-2 games against managerless clubs, I should say. I mean, I guess Stoke had just appointed their new manager, but playing clubs who've sacked their incumbent. Bullet sacked midweek. I looked up the stats. We've beaten them the last 6 times we've played, which of course means we're not going to do it this time. But that's got to be almost like, with no draws either, like 6 wins in the league. That's got to be without looking, that's got to be our best record against any other club. So it's all set up. 120-year celebrations as well. I think we're playing in a special commemorative kit. It's all set up for a City win, and you just know, that's it. You just know we're going to lose it.
100%. You don't even need to ask me for a prediction. It's going to be anything except a win or a draw. It's set up to lose. Everything is set up in our favor, which means we will lose.
Scrappy 1-0, 85th minute.
And we'll hit the bar maybe 4 times. We'll score 6 goals offside, and then an 89th minute Cardiff winner.
Yeah, I will say, like, being the optimist in me, because just like you, I've been quite critical of how things have looked under Volta. I think that second half against Stoke did look a whole lot better. I think if we start the game with the lineup that we finished that game, essentially, so your Miller on your left wing, Balumi on the right, Slater in midfield with Palmer and Zambrano if he's fit, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be really confident with that lineup. And then you think you've got guys like Kamara on the bench, Mellum as well, obviously, Omer as well, obviously, on the bench. You do then have those attacking options if we do need to throw them on.
Yeah.
But you've got to be beating Cardiff. Like, this has got to be like a 2-0, 3-0 sort of regulation home banker.
Yeah, jokes aside from what I said about us losing, I genuinely do think that we're in a position where we take the win from Stoke, and this is kind of cementing our kind of not rise up, but our just belief in ourselves. I'd love to see more of Kamara. I think we were all talking about where's Puerta been.
He's the other one.
That's another player. Obviously,
if he's maybe starting to get up to fitness, maybe get some minutes.
Maybe. Obviously, we're still waiting on Hughes to come back from surgery. But I think if there's any game for Bedia to get off the mark, this is probably that game. Yeah,
and that's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, this is that sort of game where, I think, was it last season, I think Twine scored his only free kick goal for us. I'm like, it's that sort of fixture where you go, it's get all the monkeys off the back and just get the win, get the goals.
They've scored 1 goal.
1 goal for the season. I think, what is it, minus 12 goal difference, 1 point.
They've scored 1, they've conceded 13. And with games starting to come like twice a week, I think it's important for us to take these opportunities when they come, especially with QPR right after them.
Yeah, I normally jot down in my notes most dangerous opposition player to keep an eye on, and I think for this one I've just put new manager bounce. I think that's probably the biggest, and the occasion, the 120-year celebrations, everything like that, home game is probably the biggest factor rather than any particular Cardiff player. So, So it goes. It's another game on BN Sports for those of us in Australia. So it does mean if you can't stay up until midnight to watch the game live, it will be available to watch first thing the next morning, which is always lovely and very much appreciated. I really wish, and I say it all the time, I really wish Tigers Plus let you watch straight away after the game finishes, but I know that's not their control. That's probably the EFL stopping that. Well, quickly, we'll just round up and finish off with the QPR game. And look, on the assumption, which is a big one, I know, that we beat Cardiff and you're heading into this QPR game, suddenly 2 wins on the bounce against a QPR side that I think only have 1 win in their last 5 games. Granted, I think we've got a pretty poor record against them in London. It suddenly could be seen as quite a winnable game. And all of a sudden you're looking at it and going, hang on, now we can actually, this is a genuine chance to build some momentum and potentially move top half. Players starting to feel more confident, trusting the manager, buying into the process. This becomes a really important or really interesting game in that sense.
I think that Walter's probably looking at these as the games that define his tenure. I think a win against Cardiff and then a win against QPR, a lot of the doubt starts kind of falling away. So I think from a selfish perspective from Walter, we need to win these and we can win these because then people start believing in the system. Not that the system is any different to last year, and I know people are going to come at me for saying that, but I think it's a surefire way for him to kind of make a statement saying that we are on our way up, and I think Ajun especially is going to be looking at these next 2.
Yeah, I think Ajun was at the Stoke game. I kind of wonder if we'd lost that Stoke game 1-0. If Ajun was there to deliver the fatal blow to Volta, but clearly got a stay of execution in some sense. Yeah, just on that point about the styles, I just don't know what football. Maybe it's I don't know. Maybe I'm just not watching football the right way. That I see our back four passing amongst themselves, and then see people say, "I'm so glad we don't pass around at the back anymore like we did under Rosenia." And I'm like, what am I watching if not people passing around at the back? But I appreciate there's a difference in the style from that point on, that we actually bypass the midfield a lot. We use the wingers, we use the centre backs who actually get up the pitch more than they probably need to. So I get that there are some differences in that sense, but it's still a very slow possession-based game style from what I've seen. So maybe as they get more confidence, that will change, and we'll see them getting it up much quicker. And certainly against Stoke, once we were chasing the game, and then even once we were on top, it did seem a lot more open. But, that's, I guess, game state coming into it, that Stoke were then chasing the game. So that helps as well. But look, I think this is a really interesting game against QPR. I think for them, Frey's probably their most dangerous option up top. I think he's found his scoring boots this season. So they've got a few options to keep an eye on in that sense. I think they got a draw last time out against, I'm forgetting who they played on the weekend, and I just watched the highlights before, but
they played Millwall.
Millwall, that's it. That's right, because Honeyman had a chance to win it late on for Millwall and missed basically an open goal.
They did have a good against Luton as well.
Yeah. So they've had a few London derbies recently. And they've looked okay. So granted, 1 win in 5 doesn't tell the story properly, but it does mean that it's not as if they're coming into the game with a huge mountain of confidence. So, look, I'll probably say a 1-1 away draw, and that would be a pretty good result if we're following it on the back of a win against Cardiff. 4 points from these 2 games, I'd say that is a pretty good return.
I want 6. No, in reality though, I do think that we'll get the win against Cardiff. And I don't know when I became optimistic. I
was just going to say your emotional range. It goes from basement.
Hey, I've been sick the last 3 days, so I'm now just trying to bring some positivity into my life.
Yeah.
I think we can beat QPR as well. I'm going to go 3-1 against Cardiff because I don't think we can not concede, and then maybe a 2-1 win against QPR.
I'll go 2-0 against Cardiff. I do think we'll keep a clean sheet. I just don't see Cardiff scoring. I'll go 1-1 against QPR. But look, thank you for joining me. This has been a short episode, but we've managed to race through all of that. I think we've covered the points. The benefit of being the third of 3 City podcasts out in the week does mean that a lot of what needs to be said has already been said elsewhere. So 1904 Club is always a fantastic listen. Check that out, as is To Hull and Back as well. They do a great job. So between the three of us, I think all the points have been covered off. But look, thanks for joining me for this one, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. And thanks everyone for listening in. We'll be back next week to review the Cardiff and QPR games, hopefully 6 points from 6. And until then, come on, City.